The name of King Henry VIII evokes associations with power, authority, and a ruler who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. For many, his reign is a grim reminder of the brutality and tyranny that plagued medieval Europe. During his lifetime, Henry dramatically changed England by establishing the Anglican Church, dissolving the monasteries, expanding royal power, strengthening the army, reforming finances, and weakening the role of the aristocracy. He was also known for his extravagant lifestyle, his love of luxury, and his patronage of the arts. However, this is not how he is remembered in history. The most sinister mark he left behind is the mysterious story surrounding his death. Legends tell of his funeral procession and how his embalmed body had already begun to decay, with a dark and foul-smelling liquid leaking from the coffin. But what could have caused this mysterious phenomenon? And what actually happened to Henry VIII? Henry VIII was born on June 28, 1491, in Greenwich, England, the second son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. In his youth, he received a comprehensive education, studying theology, music, languages, poetry, and sports, all of which prepared him not for the throne, but for a possible career in the church. His contemporaries described him as a young man of exceptional curiosity, religious devotion, and physical strength. Initially, Henry was not destined for the throne, as his older brother Arthur was the heir. But everything changed after Arthur's sudden death in 1502. This event completely rearranged Henry's destiny, making him the heir to the English throne. He was subsequently betrothed to his brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. In 1509, at the age of only 17, Henry became King of England and just 6 weeks later married Catherine. Henry was eager to prove himself as a warrior king. He wanted to wage war against England's historic enemy, France. He wanted to win glory and recognition on the battlefield. At first, these ambitions were curbed by his late father's advisors, who still controlled the royal treasury. But with the help of the influential Cardinal Wolsey, Henry managed to circumvent the resistance of the court and pursue his military ambitions. He conducted several successful military campaigns, including an impressive victory at the Battle of Spurs. There, Henry not only won, but also captured two important French cities, Tours and Poitiers. Thus, the young king began his reign with an impressive demonstration of strength and determination. Over time, Henry's attention turned to his wife Catherine. Their marriage, which was initially a strategic alliance between the English and Spanish crowns, began to crack under the pressure of personal and political circumstances. Despite her efforts, Catherine failed to bear him a male heir, something that was crucial to the stability of the dynasty. The tension this caused gradually undermined the foundations of their relationship. 16 years after the start of their marriage, Henry's dissatisfaction with his wife reached its peak. It was then that he fell in love with Anne Boleyn, a court lady with charm and political acumen. Henry began to look for a way to annul his marriage to Catherine. His argument was that their union was invalid because she had previously been married to his brother Arthur. This marked the beginning of a long battle with the papacy, known as the King's Great Cause, in which Henry tried to persuade Rome to approve the annulment. However, the Pope categorically refused. Disappointed by the Pope's refusal to grant him a divorce for more than 7 years, Henry took decisive action. He passed a law declaring himself supreme head of the Church of England. This marked the beginning of the English Reformation and the fateful break with Rome that changed the course of British history. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, officially annulled the marriage to Catherine, and Henry married Anne Boleyn. This break with Rome led to a series of profound changes, such as the dissolution of the monasteries, the confiscation of their wealth and lands, and the transfer of power to the crown. The Act of Supremacy of 1534 declared Henry the head of the Anglican Church, and the Treason Act of the same year made criticism of the king or his policies a punishable offence, effectively silencing his political opponents in Britain. After taking complete control of his affairs, both political and personal, Henry turned his attention to Anne Boleyn with a single goal in mind: the birth of a male heir. However, like Catherine, she failed to give him what he so desperately wanted. Unfortunately, this led to her execution in 1536. The official reasons given at the time were charges of adultery, incest, and treason, although historians today believe that these charges were fabricated. But the search for an heir did not stop there. The following year, Henry married Jane Seymour, who finally bore him a son, Prince Edward. However, the king's joy was short-lived. Jane died just days after giving birth, most likely from a postpartum infection. After her, Henry married 3 more times. One of his subsequent wives was the young Catherine Howard, who was also executed for adultery, sharing the tragic fate of Anne Boleyn. His last 2 wives, Anne of Cleves and Catherine Parr, managed to survive and even outlived him. In the last years of his life, Henry VIII was far removed from the image of the athletic and charismatic ruler of his youth. After a serious accident during a tournament in 1536, he suffered a leg injury that never fully healed. This, combined with his excessive weight gain and developed diabetes, led to chronic pain, limited mobility, and a severe change in his character. He became increasingly angry, paranoid, and cruel. By 1547, at the age of 55, Henry was a physical and emotional wreck. His condition had become a real ordeal, not only for himself, but also for those around him. He was described as a swollen, smelly wreck, weighing around 180 kilograms, 400 pounds, and with a waistline that had expanded to an uncomfortable 137 centimeters, 54 inches. In his later years, Henry suffered from a number of chronic problems: obesity, diabetes, lymphedema, and most of all, leg ulcers that gave off a terrible smell. This gave rise to rumors that he was rotting alive while still breathing. The ulcers were not just small wounds, they lingered for years and necrotized the soft tissues. Combined with obesity, infections, and a weak immune system, Henry emitted such a strong, unpleasant odor that courtiers believed he was decomposing. But in fact, he was alive. All these symptoms and his appearance gave his contemporaries the impression that Henry was a living corpse. His body looked swollen and his skin dark and dead. Over time, his body simply could not withstand it. On January 28, 1547, at Whitehall Palace in London, the king died. The causes of his death were complex: years of overeating, chronic injuries from jousting tournaments, a probable infection, and even possible syphilis, although this has never been proven with certainty. Shortly after the king's death, his body was embalmed, which was common practice for royalty in order to delay decomposition and allow for a proper state funeral. The embalming process involved removing the internal organs and filling the body with preservatives. After this procedure, the king's remains were placed in a lead coffin and temporarily laid to rest in the royal chapel at Hampton Court Palace. But even after his death, Henry VIII found no peace. The original plan was for him to be buried at Windsor Castle, next to his third wife, Jane Seymour, whom Henry considered his only true queen because she had given him the male heir he so desired. But the journey from London to Windsor proved to be a fatal challenge. During the funeral procession, the lead coffin began to leak. A strong, unpleasant odor emanated from it, which could not be concealed. This was a clear sign that despite the embalming, the process of decomposition had already begun. The exact cause of the leak and the extent of decomposition are not fully documented, but the incident caused great shock and embarrassment. The decomposition of Henry VIII's body has given rise to various speculations over the years. Some historians suggest that embalming techniques at the time were less effective than modern methods, and that travel in warm weather worsened the condition of the body. Others point to the king's physical condition before his death, including his obesity and possible illnesses, as factors that contributed to this. The leakage and odor are often cited as evidence of the poor condition of the king's body during his lifetime, leading to its perception as a rotting body. But there is another possibility, which is that the embalming itself may have been delayed. The king's death was kept secret for 2 days to ensure a smooth transition of power to his son, Edward VI. During this time, the body remained undisturbed in the royal bedroom, and the servants were ordered to bring food to maintain the illusion that Henry was still alive. This delay, combined with his advanced health problems, probably made the embalming less effective and allowed decomposition to begin before the coffin even left the palace. Whatever the real reasons for the gruesome decomposition of Henry VIII's body, this story remains one of the strangest and most disturbing events in the royal history of England. The incident cast a shadow over Henry's grand funeral procession, but despite everything, the procession continued. The king's body was taken to Windsor Castle, where he was finally laid to rest in St. George's Chapel, next to the only woman who bore him a son, Jane Seymour. And although his mortal remains did not stand the test of time, the legend of Henry VIII, the powerful, cruel, narcissistic king who changed the history of England, remains eternal. If you enjoyed this story or are a fan of history, then our video on the history of Egypt in 15 minutes will undoubtedly take you on a new and very interesting journey. You can see the video on the left side of your screen,